So it's quite strange. I have always felt different. Um, Never really fitted in. I was never bullied or anything either, but I just always felt weird and like I was really not understood. Or that annoyingly, or that I was just being dramatic. If I'd say, "Oh, I can't do that," especially with something physical, I'd be like, someone threw a ball at me or whatever, I'd be like, I can't, like, I'd freak out about it, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. And so that's obviously like a physical side of dyspraxia, but people just thought I wasn't trying. And so that was always really, really hard for me because it was quite the opposite. I would put in a lot of effort to almost everything I do in a day. And it just people never really noticed that and always thought I was just being lazy or that I didn't care, because I maybe wasn't getting the results other people were. In school, teachers would always say, Chelsea's so capable, but she doesn't apply herself. When, in reality, I'd go home and I would cry over, report cards like that because my mum would know how much I'm trying and I just wouldn't get the results that other people would. And this was like an ongoing theme throughout primary school, throughout high school. And it was difficult because if I really, put in 1,000 times effort, yes, I could get a good enough, result. Like, for instance, I've always been quite a good speller. So particularly in primary school, I think maybe this is why it might have gone missed. I would have always got like 10 out of 10 on spellings. My maths was quite poor, but they would just put that down to me being an English person and not a maths person. So for a long time, it just basically went unnoticed. And it wasn't until I got to university that things started to change. I had really supportive lecturers, and they dealt with quite a lot of neurodiverse students before, and I think they just noticed a lot of patterns being the same, like, being in hyper focus, kind of being very like agitated in class because I really wanted to do really, really well. I had it in my head I was going to be this, bigwig journalist, and I took it all very, very seriously, but I found myself getting very irritated in class when other people weren't listening, which is nearly ironic because that's kind of what I would be like in class if I wasn't interested in a subject. I would be very talkative, over talkative and things because I just couldn't concentrate. So the lecturers basically were like, I think, you should get an assessment. And so then, after a month or two, I think this was in my second year. Yeah, I think it was like November in my second year of uni. They assessed me, and it was very much like a physical assessment. So, they would check, how hypermobile I was, for example. They'd ask me questions about learning how to ride a bike and drive a car and things like that. And it had taken me a very long time to pass my driving test. So that was another kind of strong point for them to basically diagnose me with dyspraxia. I was also born like a month premature, and that's also a huge kind of warning sign, or not really warning sign, I'm not trying to be negative, but it's just something they kind of align with. People who have dyspraxia tend to be premature. So yeah, that's how I got diagnosed. And then the thing about it, I never really took it as anything serious because I grew up always being a very clumsy child. It was always like, oh, Chelsea, you're so careless, you've broken that again, watch where you're going and things like that. And I would really, really try, and I still, would knock things over, fall over myself quite a lot. And I just kind of turned it into humor. So I would, make fun of myself quite a lot and be like, oh, I'm so clumsy, oh, don't give that to me, I'll drop it, things like that. And so whenever they diagnosed me with dyspraxia, they only ever talked me through those physical symptoms, which I was already very aware with and I was living with every day, like I said, the clumsiness and not being very good at sports and things like that from poor hand-eye coordination. So I didn't, think anything more of it really. I was like, yeah, I've got that. And they also said, sometimes it can affect your handwriting, and I would agree, like my handwriting was kind of messy. And I would prefer joint writing because it kind of was easier to do, which sounds kind of, again, opposite, but I did actually find joint writing easier to do. And, I'm on the computer most of the time now, but that was, again, just another physical thing. So kind of if we want to go back to like other things that when I was in school I struggled with, one of the biggest problems was working memory problems. So I would, be in class, I'd be trying really, really hard to focus, and a teacher would just be talking at you, because especially back in 2004, I would have been starting high school. Even back then, even with interactive whiteboards, quite a lot of time the teachers spent talking directly to you. And I would just be like focusing on their face, like trying to zone everything out and be like, I'm listening, but like I still couldn't process it. So that was the biggest hurdle I had, auditory process, and them talking, me not really taking so long to decode it, and trying to make notes, but quite often my notes didn't make sense because I was missing gaps of information, and that comes down to my poor working memory. They'd say something and I'd be like, what was that word they said? Would never come back to me. And then I couldn't ask someone else in class, because then it was like, Chelsea, stop distracting everyone again, because it was happening so frequently and I was missing so much. So obviously, the more I asked of the people, the more the teacher just thought I was talking. So that was something that really affected me throughout primary school, high school, everything. Initially, it was kind of good to just have a sheet of paper that said, yes, Chelsea has this, because I always knew there was something not right about me, which again sounds negative, but just when I compare myself to other people my age, I thought maybe because I was premature and I was young for my year in school, that's what it was. Like I was just missing a beat, because maybe I should have been kept back a year and I should have started P1 a year later, for example. But having this kind of formal diagnosis that says, yeah, Chelsea has struggles and will struggle throughout school life, physically, but they kind of glossed over the cognitive problems, and kind of at that point I didn't really know enough about it to dive into that, and as well didn't really have the interest to dive into it at that point because I was so focused on doing other things. So yeah, it was good to get the diagnosis, and it has kind of helped me now because I've reflected and I've realized how important that cognitive piece is, and that was kind of the missing piece of my puzzle throughout my school life. So it's kind of helped me connect the dots of who I am, why I am the way that I am. And it's not only just like embracing that, but it's kind of like I always worked against it and tried to like shove away all those negative symptoms I had. Whereas now I feel like I'm really working with it and like, using it to my advantage. But it is a long process, and I feel like it just, it's not going to happen overnight. And it's quite a recent realization that I've had connecting these dots. It actually started when I started at Texel. So, we deal with all students who struggle in various different ways, ADHD, dyslexia, a language barrier, for example. And when I was writing the content for all of these different barriers, I started to see a lot of similarities and pick up on a lot of words that maybe I wasn't using or wasn't diving into enough. So after, doing a lot of research and things like that, because obviously I wanted to make sure my writing was on par and I was getting, to the real crux of the issues in the story. That's when I started to kind of realize, oh, hold on, those things that you thought were just weird or quirks might be this and might be that. So that's when I started to kind of connect the dots. I, for a long time, thought I had ADHD. Quite often it comes out in being over talkative, it comes out in lack of concentration, and it doesn't mean you have to be bouncing off the walls hyper. You could be hyper in the way that you are, like, I kind of am the way that I talk. I'm really over the top. So I think that was another kind of aha moment. And also something that is a big thing that I deal with is hyperfocus. So I hyperfocus, especially if I've got a deadline coming up, and I will zone everything out. I will not leave my workstation. I will not go to the toilet. I will not drink water. I will forget to eat until I have finished or been happy with a point that I've got up to in that document. And I didn't realize, I thought that was just me. So I didn't realize that was hyperfocus was a thing. So then eventually, after the hyperfocus, what happens is I burn out, and then I struggle to refocus. So if I've had a lot of deadlines, the next day I could really struggle getting back into the work mode and tackling new challenges, unless I'm given kind of another tight deadline. So it kind of is a little bit of a struggle there. But quite often, just having the whole like, I hate to disappoint people thing is enough to keep me driven and keep powering through and completing tasks. And I also love to tick things off. So if there's a tick list, more than often it's getting done. So I thought that this was then just an ADHD thing, but then after doing even more research, I realized that this is also a dyspraxia thing. So this was a real eye-opener for me, and I started thinking, okay, so you have this diagnosis for dyspraxia. You're now realizing all of these things that have, gone on throughout your entire life are actually aligned with dyspraxia. So I no longer felt like I needed to seek like an ADHD diagnosis or go to the doctor or anything about that, because I felt like I could own it enough with the dyspraxia. And I wasn't ever looking to get an ADHD diagnosis for an excuse or anything like that. It was just more so for peace of mind, and knowing those links, and there's so much crossover between ADHD and dyspraxia, that has given me that peace of mind. I actually use it to power me on. So I'll go, right, because I know I've got dyspraxia, because I know I struggle to listen to this or focus to this, I use that to my advantage, and I will, ahead of time ask people to do XYZ. If we're going into a meeting, make sure that there's a clear agenda so I don't get over anxious, make sure that the meeting's being recorded so that it's not affecting auditory processing, because I know I can go back to that later. And so those are just ways that I've used that to, maybe not my advantage, but certainly stopped it from slowing me down any further, if that makes sense. So I'm really lucky because Text Help are really aware of all of these issues and neurodivergence and anything to do with barriers. So all I have to do is let my manager know, which she does, and she's super supportive with this. So she will always actually advocate for me and say, oh, hey, she knows the meeting isn't being recorded, can we just record this? And she won't necessarily say it's for Chelsea. So that's just another way of like Text Help really supporting me, and they give me so much like understanding and autonomy over my work. So there's never a level of distrust there, which is something I've faced before. And that's really helped my confidence too. So this is a fairly straightforward one for me. Two of the most crippling kind of aspects of dyspraxia for me are the self-esteem issues, confidence in general, and the poor working memory that I've kind of mentioned before. This impacts me daily, hourly, every minute of the day, if I'm being completely honest. So an example is, I'm working, I'll go downstairs, I'm going to get a glass of water. I get to the kitchen and I cannot remember what I'm downstairs for. So I will stand in the kitchen for a minute, I'll look around me, I'll have no idea, it's not retriggering my memory, so I'll end up just going back upstairs, and it's not till I've reached upstairs again that it's dawned on me what it is that I was after. So there's that's just another example how like everything is like twice as much effort sometimes, and it's like, it seems like such a small thing, but when that's happening several times a day, it's really frustrating and it really gets you down, and it then has another impact on your confidence. So again, like I said, the double effort, and then the second thing is the poor working memory. So this has impacts on like conversations with my husband, for example. So, we could be having an important discussion and he'll be making several points. I will then be trying to decode those points and have my own input. And then I'll come to a blocker because he's maybe moved on and I've not had time to decode that point properly. And I forgot what he said and I end up zoning out. And I can't, stand my own ground. I can't input my information. And then, it seems like I'm disinterested, that I don't care about the conversation, when actually it's normally the opposite. So that can be a real struggle. But luckily, my husband is very supportive. He has dyslexia, so he understands those kind of processing cognitive issues, and as long as I make him aware of it, like I'm not keeping up, and like often he knows because I've got a specific zoned out face, but if he knows I'm kind of struggling to keep up, he'll like break it down, and maybe he'll like make little points for me written down that I can go through later, or he'll maybe say, can we put a pin in this and we'll come back and talk to it later, I'll give you time to kind of debrief it in your own brain. So that's really helpful. But like I said, it's still an issue. It's still something that's not nice to deal with every day. And also, like I said, that then affects your confidence. So I feel like I don't have the confidence to make a certain point in a conversation because have I missed a piece of information that was really vital? And therefore, am I going to look stupid for putting forward that piece of information whenever they might have already said that? Or it's irrelevant because, they've made another point since then. So yeah, so then, like I said, that really affects my confidence and like my self-worth, and it leads to me being a kind of chronic people pleaser. And I do this affects like all aspects of my life. So because I'm so scared of getting things wrong or being in trouble or, having missed a piece of information that was really important, I often just say yes to everything. And then, deal with the consequences of being burnt out or maybe doing something that I really don't want to do. So yeah, it's not a very nice problem to have, but I'm kind of getting there every day. And like I said, my husband helps me break down, those kind of lengthy conversations and stuff, so that I can have an input and can have an opinion, and that in turn then helps me grow that confidence. But it's a really long journey, and like I said, it's a fairly recent realization that's why these things are happening. So it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm getting better at that, and that's, like I said, helping grow my confidence. So it's basically the same two contributing factors with work as well. There'll be, some tasks I'm having difficulty with, and then I have a lot of self-doubt, a lot of self-confidence issues there too. So I haven't given myself an easy task. I am a content writer, so I'm putting myself under the cosh all the time for criticism. And I've got better with this over time, but of course, if you thought you'd done a good job and it's maybe not hit the brief or whatever, that can be really, really difficult to hear, and that has its impact on maybe the rest of the day for me, rest of the week sometimes, and sometimes it has an impact on me wanting to maybe touch that topic again until I've overcome it. But luckily I'm quite a driven person, so if I do get something wrong and it has affected my confidence, I get kind of competitive with myself and I want to overcome that. So I, will research absolutely everything on that topic to make sure that the next time it's not wrong. I do find, again, because of the working memory issues, I do find video meetings quite challenging sometimes, especially if they're very long. So what I tend to do is have them ask for them to be recorded. Quite often they are. TextHelp, we're really good at recording meetings for this reason. And also sometimes it's just good to go back through something. You think you can catch the whole conversation at the time, but maybe there's things that you wanted to kind of rehash and recheck. So that really helps with me. And if I've made notes throughout a long meeting, having the recording there, I can just go back and double check my notes against that. Because like I said before, sometimes I'll make notes and they won't make sense to me once I've reread them. So that's an issue, and that's kind of how I deal with it. And then if we go back to the physical clumsiness issue that I have, I pride myself, and have always prided myself on being a really, really great speller. Most people will, if they've got a difficult word to spell, they'll say, Chelsea, how do I spell this? And I can just do it. But sometimes when I say I'm dyspraxic, people think I mean dyslexic. And so then they don't come forward to me with, spellings or certain words or whatever, because they kind of assume that I don't know what that is, when in essence it's actually the opposite. But how this relates to the physical clumsiness is, although I'm a really good speller, sometimes the clumsiness sometimes the clumsiness has an impact on my typing. So if my brain is going 1,000 times an hour, it takes a while for those messages to get through to my fingertips. So I think I'm typing a certain thing, and then I look back at it and it doesn't look anything like it because my brain's gone a lot faster than my hands have. So that's again something I'm trying to work on, and actually I'm sure we'll come to this, but TextHelp tools help me with that as well. Okay, so I use Read&Write and Read quite a lot. This helps me because with Read&Write specifically, they've got the speech to text, and a lot of days when my brain is going that million times an hour and my hands aren't keeping up, it's a really good way for me to keep my ideas flowing when they're flowing, because like I said, the working memory issue can crop up quite a lot. So if I've got a good idea, I want to keep it there, and that really helps to do that. I also use the opposite. I use the text to speech once I have written something and I want to make sure there are no obvious mistakes there. That will help me with that. So it'll read it back to me and I'll instantly know when I've made a mistake. Also, because of the way that it works, as it reads, it highlights as it reads. So that helps me visually pick up on errors that maybe I would have missed otherwise. And also screen masking is really helpful. So if I'm having to, research something and it's a really long, lengthy, boring document, the screen masking helps me focus on certain areas and just keep me pinned in. So that's how I use those. Read&Write also has these highlighters, which are really amazing. So you can highlight a piece of text in one color, highlight another piece of text in another color, and it will collect those notes and you can pop them into like a separate doc. And it's just so handy for like breaking up text, or if you're someone like me who kind of struggles to focus on certain areas of text or remembering where you were in a place of text, sometimes the highlighters are really great. I'll pull out that piece of information for this and I can write a little note, pull out this piece of information for this. Oh, this isn't relevant for the task that I'm on now, but this could be relevant in the future. So then I'll save that collected high note under a different color and save that in another doc for another time. So ReachDeck then helps me with my confidence. So again, that probably sounds weird, but I'm really kind of self-deprecating, and I don't trust my own gut, even though quite often my gut is right. I've come to find over the years. It's just basically I put in, a piece of text, and it will kind of let me know if my sentences are too long, too short. Maybe if I've thought I've written a really good word, but am I questioning whether it's too overcomplicated and things like that, then ReachDeck helps me kind of highlight that. So that's the way in which I use ReachDeck, and I do that. I put most of my content through ReachDeck nearly every day. I know that there are a lot of positives with neurodivergence, and other people would probably say, or have said to me, I suppose, I'm very creative, I'm good at problem solving, and I'm very empathetic. But this is a fairly recent thing since I've been at Text Help. I haven't really received that kind of feedback before. So a lot of these symptoms and things are still kind of in the making sense to me phase and clicking into place with the diagnosis of dyspraxia. So I maybe haven't had it as long as some other people to connect those dots, and therefore I haven't quite got to the strengths bit yet. But like I said, my peers and my manager and things always are really kind, and they always tell me that I'm really creative, I'm really good at problem solving, and I'm really empathetic, and that comes through in my writing. So I suppose those are all dyspraxia symptoms, and those are our strengths, I suppose, in this conversation. To kind of go against that, when I was in school and when I first started working in a professional environment, I was told I was too soft, I needed to grow with thicker skin, and that my empathy was a weakness, especially in the world of work, and especially because I was trying to pursue journalism, and I was working in PR agencies and things. And I think some people are just born with a thicker skin too, and can kind of brush things off. I did kind of take a lot of things to heart. It's just naturally the way that I am. I thought that was something I could correct within myself, but after almost 30 years on the planet, I realized it's not something that I could just correct. It is the way that I am, and I'm trying not to see it as a negative anymore, because I do believe it's the reason that I'm now at Text Help. I love helping others. It's something I've always been really passionate about, and it's something I've always wanted to have a career where I could help others. So being at Text Help helps me do that, because I am writing content to inspire others and to help others with any challenges or barriers that they have. Yes, absolutely. So my husband is dyslexic, and it was always seen as quite a negative thing for him in the school and working world. And so even though I had this dyspraxia diagnosis in university, I never told anyone about it, because I found it rather embarrassing because of all the prejudices against it, like, oh, she's got like clumsy syndrome, and also you would have a lot of disbelief. People would be like, oh, you're just clumsy, you can't put a name on that. Or they'd also say things like, oh, everyone has to have a condition nowadays. So I just wouldn't say anything. And because I wasn't aware of, really dug into the cognitive links there, I never expressed it to an employer. But in hindsight, I kind of wish I had, although to be honest, I felt like the places that I worked were behind in kind of inclusive culture anyway. And I think even if I had told them, it probably would have only gone against me even further. Whereas I now work at Text Help, and they're very neuro-inclusive, and they're very aware and forward thinking, and they express how much people with neurodivergence particularly are kind of different thinkers and think outside the box, and really encourage me and empower me to kind of own it. And yeah, like I said, I'm not 100% there yet at, seeing it as a full strength, but Text Help is actually helping me do that. They first helped me recognize it, and now they're kind of helping me every day to grow my confidence and feel more empowered every day. I think having these tools is just a priceless thing. Like, if I had these tools growing up, my life would be dramatically different. So I think now that, neuro-inclusive is something we should all be aiming for in the workplace, I feel like if we're having these tools in school, we should be having them in the workplace too. It should carry through. You shouldn't get cut off just because you're in the world of work. You need to grow up and be an adult now, because it's not something that you grow out of. You have this barrier. You're born with this barrier, so it's not just going to go away. So absolutely, employers need to be supportive of their staff, realize the strengths that people with disabilities and neurodivergence have, and not see it as a negative, not see it as a weakness, and only empower them by giving them the tools that's going to help them do their job more efficiently, and give them peace of mind and stop having self-doubt and crippling anxiety, due to not having the tools that they need at their fingertips. If we go back to me, I didn't disclose to my employers that I was dyspraxic. I masked the entire time, through nail biting, nail picking, lip biting, you name it, hair fidgeting, everything, foot tapping, and over talking as well. So I masked it the entire time. But it is so important for workplaces to have these open conversations and not just make it like a tick box on a form, because as someone who is neurodiverse, having that tick box on the form makes it feel like, if I tick this, does this mean that I don't get the job? Or does this mean that when I do get the job, I'm going to get treated a certain way? It shouldn't be like that. It probably shouldn't even be on the form. It should just be an open conversation after you've got the job. Is there anything we can do? Is there any tools that you need? You don't even have to say, do you have a condition that we need to provide tools for? It needs to be like, we have these tools, or would you find any of these beneficial? So that's something I feel like should be just part of every workplace going forward. So being in a workplace that didn't have Read&Write or Reach Deck was a workplace or an employee with extreme anxiety, second guessing my every word, spending way longer in documents than I needed to, because I didn't trust what I'd written, because I was looking out for mistakes that I was sure I would have made. So yeah, it's really just not having that peace of mind. Whereas now I have that peace of mind at my fingertips. I can basically check it off there and then, and I have confidence to give it to my manager or a peer without feeling like I'm going to get judged, without them coming back with 1,000 notes of silly mistakes. I'm saying silly because that's something that people would have said to me before. So it's just that, it's just that peace of mind, really. So absolutely, couldn't recommend it more. I already recommended it to my husband through Text Help's Free for Family program. And he feels the exact same way I do. Like, if we wish we had access to Read&Write throughout school. It would have helped me keep up with my peers, just build my confidence in ways I don't have now. I don't have that confidence, and I'm kind of starting from scratch ever since I started Text Help, because they are giving me the tools to give me that confidence, and my husband completely echoes that. We just wouldn't have had to struggle the way that we did if we'd had this tool in our school lives. So couldn't recommend it more. And even if you don't have a neurodivergence or a disability or even a barrier, it's still a tool that can help everyone in some way, whether it be the highlighters, it's just incredibly useful.